My name is Matt Richards. My studio is 𝐬 Sakebi, which if you translate, that's Japanese. If you translate that into English, it's Call of the Dragon. A lot of what I do in my work, I kind of implement dragons and everything. So it's kind of a neat studio name I came up with. I wanted it to be different. I felt here in America that Matt Richards Studio would be kind of bland. I mean, because it's a common name. So that's why I kind of gave it some pizzazz with 𝐬 Sakebi. I started doing pottery in Japan. My grandfather did pottery, so when I was young, I got the experience of watching him do it. But I really didn't do anything hardcore until I went to Japan, where I had a course and studied with a Japanese master. So it was that first year that really dug into me, and then I was there for another 15 years where I worked with a different Japanese pottery master, and it really started to grow on me. The thing that inspired me to become an artist is it's not an easy answer. My mother was an artist, my dad. I mentioned my grandfather earlier doing pottery. My dad did woodworking. It wasn't his job, but he did it as a hobby. So I grew up watching him create fantastic wood creations. My mother did wonderful illustrations. So I kind of had it in me. When I was in high school, I did take art classes, but not to become an artist. That wasn't my goal when I was in high school. But things kind of changed when I was in Japan and started doing pottery and other things. And so now I'm just inspired to do it all the time. One of the biggest inspirations in my art is as I said earlier, dragons. But I guess in general, with my pottery, I don't like to make normal pottery, if that makes any sense. There's nothing wrong with cups and bowls and dishes, and I've made them. There's some right behind me. But I like to make things that are kind of wacky. I like to make things that can amuse my fans. My dragons are not necessarily crazy, strong, wicked dragons. They're more fun. They're having fun. They're doing mischievous things. And not just the dragons, but I have other creations, birds, and I have bird witches, and I love Halloween. So there's a lot of Halloween going on in my studio. And I just like to do things that are fun and a little bit wicked, but to make my customers laugh. So people often ask me what's one of my favorite pieces, and there's more than a few favorites here right now, but one of my longtime favorites is this dragon up here. It's on an oak board, but everything else, this is all ceramic. It's all hand done. This part was just rolled out slabs, made the box, and then built that dragon around it. And I actually made that before I was in the studio. I was working at another small studio and came up with that, and I just love that piece. And I did recreate. I made a second one and a third one, and the second one fell over at the first outdoor show I ever did and broke off pieces of it. So I glued them back together, sort of, and I ended up selling it to a friend for a steal. She loved it and was thrilled with it. The third one cracked in the cool down of the firing. So I said, you know what? I'm not meant to make him. This is it. So he's kind of my studio guardian. He's been here with me for a while. One of my other favorite dragons is the big flying dragon up here. She's been with me for a while. Years ago, after I had a really bad outdoor show and I was not happy with it, I came back and said, I just want to make a big dragon head, or a big dragon. So I made the head, finished that, and then about 2 weeks later, I did the tail. And then I sat for a couple months, and I mean, not the whole time, but I contemplated what I was going to do for the rest of the dragon. So then I just decided to go very minimalist. And the idea here is that you could hang the rings at different heights, or arrange them, or maybe you could put a piece of cloth through it, or kind of do what you want with it to kind of give it life of its own. So that's one of my favorite pieces. And of course, there are smaller versions. There's one hanging right up above my head here, and then there's another one over there, because this mama dragon had a baby, and then that baby had another baby. So that's what the dragons do. The challenges of my art business, challenges of running the studio. Well, first of all, it's a business. It's my living right now. So there's that difficulty in figuring out what people are gonna like. Just because I have an idea of what's something I think, hey, this is really awesome, I'll put it out there and doesn't take it. And then I just have to stop that and move on to something else. I'd like to think that a lot more of my recent creations are hitting big with people, but it's still a challenge even now to try to figure out what people are going to enjoy. If I'm trying to come up with sort of a kind of a one-shot sculpture, sometimes I'll get an idea about something I want the dragons to be doing, And it doesn't always necessarily physically work engineering-wise with creating it, because the clay is doing something. There are technical aspects of pottery that there are rules that you have to follow. And if you don't, their piece might blow up or fall apart in the firings. So that can be a challenge sometimes, trying to get my idea in and see it come into fruition. Everybody thinks that you just make something and you fire it and it's done. What they don't realize is that if I fire 10 pieces, we're very, very lucky if all 10 of them survive. It also depends on how complicated they are. If they're a fairly simple piece, then there's a better chance of success. But they don't understand that there's a trash pile that builds up over time of things that that are never gonna see the light of day, because things happen. And sometimes you have no control over them, and that can be a challenge, trying to deal with the things you can't control. So people often ask me, what advice would I give people who wanna get into the art business? I would say there's nothing wrong with studying a little bit of maybe some business courses that can help you with that. I don't have any of that experience. Doing it when you're younger, I started later in life, so that had some difficulties there. A lot of people say they supplement. They don't go in full tilt. I kind of did, but I did supplement it with translating, because I did live in Japan. I can speak Japanese, so I would periodically run off someplace for a week or two or a month or a couple months to translate, and that would help supplement the income. But I mean, if you want to do it, give it a try. Like I said, it's not easy. If you just want to create things and you don't want any kind of stress, then maybe maintain it as a hobby. But if you're willing to, take on that challenge, again, the challenge of doing it as a business, then just work hard at it. You got to figure out what people are what's gonna be sellable, what they're gonna enjoy. But I think if you really put your spirit into it, I think people they'll start to catch on to that, and they'll get that vibe from you, and that will help you to be successful. In a nutshell. Looking ahead to this spring show, not really. Right now I'm working on Valentine's show, which is in a couple more weeks. So I have a couple items that are a little bit Valentine-y for people that I think they might. There's actually a sneak peek to some of those at the holiday show. I only had a couple of them, and people enjoyed them. So I'm working on those right now. And a few dragons, of course. Always got dragons coming. And for the spring show, I'm not sure yet. I'll continue to do some of the favorites, but I don't know what twists I'm going to put them on yet. And sometimes I have ideas that come to me like that, and I'm like, okay, I'm thinking ahead. Other times it's like these ideas come to me a couple weeks before a show, and I'm like, oh, I need to get them out. And so it's hard to control. You can't control where the inspiration comes from. So sometimes that's what makes things difficult. As an artist, I like to experiment in all sorts of different mediums. When I was younger, I did drawing and illustrations. Now I'm full-blown into pottery, but I also do blacksmithing. A good example of my desire to try different things is that if you have this piece, one of my wood-fired pieces, but this was done in the kiln. This is all clay. This is metal. I forged this handle to match this piece. So I think it's a great combination of the two mediums. And then behind it here, a lot of people ask, well, they figure this is pottery, but this mask is actually made out of leather. So the wood I picked out is walnut, maple, cherry, and then these are actual antlers. And then we have the leather heads, the leather dragon heads, which I made. Put those together, and then we have kind of something different. So I always like to try different things. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we move on to other things. So a lot of the feedback I get about my pottery and why people come back is, as I was saying earlier, I think that they're amused by what I make, and they love it. It causes a reaction, and they're moved by what I make, and it makes them happy. So I think they're coming back for some more of that happiness and see some of the silly things that I do with the pottery. It's 5 years. I hope to be doing what I'm doing, and just what I try to do every year. I have a lot of kind of fan favorite items, but I also like to bring in new things. So I hope that in another 5 years, my studio will not look like what it looks like now with the creations that I have here. I hope that what I have here will move on, and I'll have new and fresh things, new ideas that will amuse my fans, and that they'll continue to enjoy that with my new creations.